needed a change, not because I know it was needed, but because of how I would have viewed Quinn if he hadn't made the change. I talked about this immediately following the game because I did a post-game podcast, and I said, now's the moment. Quinn really doesn't have a choice because it's all going to fall back on him now. Whether or not we knew or know for sure that Joe Witt Jr. is the primary culprit of one of the worst defenses we've seen in a long time. And that's saying something because we've seen some bad defenses around here over the last decade plus. This is the worst. This is the worst. And yes, there are injuries, and injuries are a reality, and injuries have impacted their performance on both sides of the ball. And yes, Seattle is an elite team right now offensively, and so is Detroit. They've been that for a couple of years. So that is all in consideration, understood. But it's not about Sunday or last Sunday night. It's about 30 games of a resume that stinks. And whether or not the entire disaster defensively was the responsibility of Joe Witt Jr. solely, it couldn't be 0% of it. It couldn't. The defense was horrible last year. It's worse this year. Along with Cincinnati's, it's now the laughingstock defense of the league. And Dan Quinn, as a defensive head coach, had to step in and say enough is enough. I said on Sunday night, he either takes this over himself, gives it to somebody else, and whether that means firing Joe Witt Jr. or not was immaterial to me. I'm not, what some of you are. I don't need the scalp. I don't need the firing to be placated. I just need something where Joe Witt Jr. isn't the primary defensive coordinator and play caller anymore. I don't even know if it'll work, given their personnel. Their personnel is MAC level, Sun Belt level, old school Big 12 defense level. 30 games of Joe Witt Jr. I added them up. About 22 to 23 of them have been subpar. 14 to 15 of them horrifically awful, like on Sunday. The drive success, the yards, the points, it seemed almost like in two games what Seattle and Detroit did to them, very much with a submissive defense, a zero resistance defense. When you see a team score 8 times on 8 drives with no turnovers, no punts, and no turnover on downs, that definitely got my attention. As it was happening, I looked it up, and I still don't know, because, again, I was a bit out of it yesterday. Yesterday, I was going to look for whether or not, AI-produced result was Buffalo had the longest consecutive stretch of scores on drives in a game without a punt, turnover, or turnover on downs. In a playoff game against New England in 2021, they went 7 for 7, all touchdowns, by the way. They missed 2 extra points in a 47-17 win over the Patriots. Remember that? That was the swan song, really, for Belichick, in terms of being effective in New England. Mac Jones, helped in that year, but they were outmatched by Buffalo. And Washington was sitting there each drive. And by the way, they were all easy. 8 for 8. Now, the last drive, they just ran the clock out. The defense literally right now does nothing well, and almost everything poorly. They can't cover. That's been a season-long thing. They can't rush the passer. They can't stop the run. They can't take the ball away. You need to be near the ball to take it away. And they weren't anywhere near it on Sunday. 44 points, 546 yards, 8 yards per play. 8. Goff threw 25 of 33 for 320 and 3 touchdowns, and he barely got hit, let alone sacked. And I said this immediately following the game on my podcast. I think 18 to 19 of those 25 completions were legitimately with no defender within 10 to 15 yards. It was one of the most embarrassing defensive performances I've ever seen. And last Sunday night was bad. This one was worse. I mean, bad defenses over the years. God, man, we have talked about that so many times. You know, as long as we've been doing this together, I think about there have been some offensive football teams where we've been like, yeah, we're pretty good. We're pretty legit offensively. When's the last time we said we were legit defensively? 2022 was a real aberration year, clearly, with the players they had, the season they had. They actually played well defensively, you know, but maybe 2007, 2005, some bad defenses over the years. Remember how bad the defense was in 2016? How bad it was, you know, at times in 2023? Nothing's as bad as this. Nothing. And then it unraveled the other night with respect to cool. Look, when you're frustrated, the easy answer from the high and mighty is nothing justifies that. Nothing justifies losing your cool. Sometimes there are things that justify losing your cool. But when you see Deron Payne get ejected and get suspended, by the way, Javon Kinlaw and Quan Martin get flagged, and I know that they had their own versions of what happened. When you see, that kind of cool lost where it's not just one player, it's multiple players, you are witnessing a team or a side of the ball that is starting to unravel. And I bet that had a big say in Dan Quinn finally pulling the trigger on Joe Witt Jr. You know, when you see one player losing their cool, sometimes it's justified. Sorry, it is. I mean, you don't want them to do it. You want them to be cool. Let the other team get the 15-yard penalty, even if the ref misses it. And apparently the ref may have missed something that Amon-Ra St. Brown did to Deron Payne. But, this was a sign that things were unraveling. When it happens in mass, not just a one-off. You see Payne, the biggest fight he's had, in a while, swinging. The jawing by Kinlaw at Goff down 20. God, that looks so stupid. It's such a bad look optically. When a player is getting his ass kicked and then he's jawing in the face of another player, losing cool happens. Losing cool in a large group is an indication that things are unraveling. And I don't know that you can say that necessarily about the offensive side of the ball. They just unfortunately have Sun Belt talent out there for the most part. Okay, understood. All right, but defensively, unraveling, Quinn had to do something. Because if Quinn doesn't do something in that moment, he starts to look bad. I hope that's not why he did it. I hope that he really feels like a change can help this situation. At first, I think after the game on Sunday night, he implied that maybe no changes would happen until the bye week after the Madrid game this Sunday. Tua and the Dolphins lining up to be the next team to torch this defense. They got to go all the way to Madrid for that to happen. I think ultimately there was a moment where Dan Quinn understood that not doing anything about Joe Witt Jr. has started to make him look weak. And again, maybe he doesn't care, and maybe he has, well, not maybe, he does have more of the answers on why the defense under Joe Witt Jr. has been an embarrassment the last two seasons and has really come to the forefront this year. But I think, if he and everyone else in that organization were reading the room, it got to the point where not doing something that felt dramatic to a certain degree to address how bad that side of the ball had become would have been a really bad look for him. So I'm glad he did it. I hope he did it for the reasons he thinks he can make a difference as the defensive coordinator. Joe Witt Jr.'s moved down to the sideline. How'd that work out? He's back to the booth, and he's going to be involved in helping, develop the game plan. But the head coach now is also a head coach defensive coordinator. He's not working with a lot, people. He is not working with much at all. Trey Amos, done for the year now. Another one, add to the list. I saw Ben tweet out, kind of the expected team that they were going to take to Madrid and what it looks like now. Half the starters gone. If you took it a step further, a significant number of the backups are gone as well. By the way, the latest news, and I didn't see that until right before the show, Treylon Burks, who had 3 catches for 58 yards, he got hurt. He's got minor finger surgery today, not going to Madrid with the team. So, yeah, it's just one after another. And of course, that's a big part of the story this year. Anybody that doesn't think so and tries to tough it, through and flex like injuries, you guys are you're idiotic. This happens to 2, 3, 4 teams a year. And it happens to at least 1 or 2 of those teams in catastrophic fashion. And that's what's happened to this team this year. Now, defensively, it didn't explain all of it. Not after the last 2 weeks. The actual opponents, elite level teams, elite level offenses. I mean, Seattle right now trending towards maybe the best team in football. This game with the Rams coming up this weekend. Wow, what a football game. I don't think last night's game was a preview of the NFC title game. I think this coming Sunday's game between the Rams and the Seahawks will be a preview of the NFC championship game. And obviously Detroit has been an elite team for multiple years now offensively. And the injuries, all of that is a part of this, there's no doubt. But it doesn't explain it all because there's only been one guy who's been leading the defense for the last 30 games since the new regime arrived. And the significant majority of those 30 games have been not only bad defensively, but from a fan's viewpoint, like on Sunday, appeared to be completely disorganized and discombobulated. And maybe that happens when you've got a lot of new players on the field. I'm not saying it's all on Witt Jr. I understand that there is nuance to all of this, and there are real reasons why they're dealing with it. But last year, the defense wasn't very good. And the only games they've had this year that have been any good at all have been against lesser teams and injured teams. The Giants, the Raiders, and the Chargers. All right. Since I did not have a chance to do it yesterday, I will do it today. I'll give you a game recap, what I liked, what I didn't like, and some other observations. I thought that there was, kind of a game management mistake made by Quinn in this one that maybe you haven't heard. Also, I think I haven't read this anywhere, but I think the yardage that Detroit got based on a percentage of the available yardage has to be close to record breaking from the game Sunday. I'll explain that when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We are also free and live on the Odyssey app. And don't forget, you can watch us on the Team 980's YouTube channel. And that is an area in which when you get there and you decide to watch this show, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button for us. Thanks.
the second was commit to this running game between the tackles, which has opened up everything else. And Jahmyr Gibbs going for a touchdown.
Gibbs takes it all the way.
Yeah, that was the seventh touchdown. That was the seventh score on the seventh drive of the game. What Detroit did to Washington's defense Sunday was emasculate it, one, destroy it, two, and for my money, perhaps create a precedent or a first time, although I have not seen that posted by Next Gen or anybody else yet. I will get to what I mean here in a moment on my game day. Real quickly on this Veterans Day, we are in. But I want to just say a thank you to all of the veterans. Thanks for your service. Thanks for your courage. Thanks for your sacrifice. And to those that serve currently, thank you so much. It is appreciated. All right, let's get to my game take from Sunday night's loss to Detroit.
Kevin's take. The good, the bad, and the ugly from yesterday's Washington Commanders game.
Let's go! Let's go!
Here's Kevin.
So this take was kind of my take right after the game on Sunday night. I have not gone back and watched the game again. I did have a few additions to the notes for those that have listened to it. But 44-22, fourth straight 21-point or greater loss, fifth straight loss overall. They are 3-7 heading to Madrid to face the Dolphins, where they are a short underdog against the Dolphins coming off that win over the Bills on Sunday. We will go around the NFL and we'll talk about last night's, rock fight between Green Bay and Philadelphia. What I liked, what I didn't like, and, a few other observations. So there were things that I thought in the game were positive and improvements from recent games. And I do want to just mention, when you get beat the way they got beat, 44-22, by the way, the second time this year they've been beaten 44-22. The first one came in Dallas a month or so ago. You have to understand that, there are motivations with the other team once they get an insurmountable lead. Once they realize they're playing essentially the little sisters of the poor, they know they can name their number. Like Philly in the NFC title game against our defense in that particular game, the offense knew that if it was 65 instead of 55 that they needed, they would have gotten it. Detroit knew from the jump that if they had needed 55 instead of 44, they could have gotten those, points. This was a massive mismatch. And, the motivations change. And all of a sudden you get players, into the game in, the fourth quarter that haven't played, backups are playing. And, the motivation just overall when you've got such a big, 32-10 lead. So you understand that context. Even some of the positives that I'm going to mention, I recognize that some of it could have come because the game was non-competitive, essentially from the start. But with that said, I'm going to mention a few things. Washington's kickoff and punt coverage, this is what I'm leading with on my list of good from the game. It has been outstanding since, the new coaching regime arrived. Larry Izzo has done, look, they've had kicker issues. We know that. But in terms of their kick and punt coverage, and by the way, their returns, especially on kickoff returns, they wanted to last year set a tone with the new kickoff returns. They thought it was an opportunity to be and establish themselves as a physical team they were going to be there all day long. And they did a great job of that, with the exception of that Dallas game late in the year in Landover. But man, they are great at covering punts and kicks. Larry Izzo is everything with his unit that Joe Witt Jr. hasn't been with his. Again, the kicker issues aside, Brandon McManus would have been nice, although he missed an opportunity at the end with a 64-yarder last night to tie the game in the Packers-Eagles game. Anyway, it's been one of the best kick and punt coverage units in the league. On Sunday against Detroit, there were 3 punt returns. The average return was 1 yard. There were 3 kickoff returns, average return 20 yards. Now, there were a couple of touchbacks. You don't like to see those. And I don't think they're intentional ever. He's trying to get that ball to land at like the 2-yard line, 1-yard line. And there have been a couple that have gone, a yard or so into the end zone. And that's an opportunity to take it out to the 35. I think in this league right now, you should never return a kickoff unless you've got like one of the most dynamic kickoff returners in the game and you've got a bad offense and you got to try to generate something. But, man, they are good at punt and kickoff coverage. They're really good on kickoff returns. Ogbenogany had a 46-yarder on the second kickoff return. I mean, Debo's had big kickoff returns. McCaffrey's had big kickoff returns. Coming into this weekend, they were the number 1 kickoff return unit in the league, and they were top 3 in coverage units. That Nick Bellore, by the way, number 57, man, is he a player on special teams? Not bad for a dude that's, I think, the second oldest player on the team at 36 years old. I think Josh Johnson is the oldest. Yeah, so that's on the good list. And then part of that is Tress Way and the way he punts it. He averaged 50 yards per kick, 49 yards net. There was, a few fair caught balls. Excellent day for Tress again, I thought. Offensively, there were some things that were, it was not the offense's fault that they got absolutely, beaten down by the Lions. I think everybody understands that. You could have been, joining the game for the first time as a football watcher and said, man, it would appear that team's offense is better than the other team's defense. Yeah, by a lot. But I thought there were a couple of performances. I thought Zach Ertz had one of his best days of the year. He had 4 catches for 54 yards in the game, and 2 to 3 of those were 50-50 balls, basically, that were really, really contested catches. It's not like they were creating any more separation on Sunday than they were on last Sunday night, but they were contested catches. I thought Ertz did a really good job. I'm sure my guy Steve Suter will kill him for his blocking, which he is described as retired level blocking, like that of a retired player. But I thought he had some good catches in the game. I thought Burks had some good catches, 3 for 58. He's not going to play. He's hurt. I thought Debo had a great catch. I'm not saying he had a great game. Remember, 2 of his 4 catches for 29 yards, that was it, were those touch passes. The snap back and Mariota just touch passes it behind the line of scrimmage. That is an actual pass reception statistically, if you didn't know that. That's not a run. If he laterals it to him, it's a run. If he hands it off to him, it's a run. But if he pushes it forward from behind the line of scrimmage and he catches it, that's a catch. If he drops it, it's an incomplete pass. We've understood that with the shovel pass over the years. I was having this conversation, I think it was over the summer with somebody. When did we first start to see the shovel pass, shotgun and just the quick shovel ahead to, the tight end or the running back or a receiver in motion? I think it may have been Elway and the Broncos with some of their players in the 80s. Now, Staubach and the Cowboys, for those of you that don't go back that far, they were the ones that kind of brought the shotgun back to the NFL. The shotgun had been gone for years. For much of the 70s and 60s and before that, football was never played in the shotgun. The quarterback was always under center, always. And then the Cowboys brought the shotgun back to the NFL in the 70s, and it was a slow adoption by other teams. And then by the time we got to the 80s, everybody was running the shotgun, except for Joe Gibbs. He didn't like the shotgun. He thought the snap was dicey. But the shovel pass, I think we go back and watch some of those Bronco teams, maybe. Dan Reeves may have introduced it. Understanding that even if it's dropped, there's no risk. It's an incomplete pass. So, look, I thought Jalen Lane had a great catch. I thought Debo had a great catch. I thought Burks had some good catches. I thought Ertz had some good catches. There were some really good contested catches in the game. I thought the offense overall, now, was it, a great day? No, it was not a great day. Part of that is because they didn't have enough opportunities because Detroit didn't give them the ball back other than on a kickoff after a score. But I thought it was the first clean game that the offense has played in a month and a half, at least, right? No turnovers, no penalties that were significant. Most of the penalty yardage, I think, was on defense and special teams. No drops. We've talked about going back to the Dallas game. I think that was the first game. I'm like, look, defensively, they don't have much of a shot to stop Dallas. So offensively, you've got to be perfect. You've got to be flawless. And that continued even against Chicago and Kansas City and Seattle and then Detroit. Like every Friday, I'm sitting here going, the offense has to play a clean game. They can't self-destruct, and they had been self-destructing in recent weeks. They did it against the Chiefs with Mariota. They did it against the Seahawks with Jaden. They did it at times with both Mariota and Jaden against the Cowboys, against the Bears. The turnovers, the drops, the penalties were killing them offensively. They played a clean game offensively. That's on the list of things that I liked. First time that's happened in at least a month and a half. And then I put Marcus Mariota on this list. I thought Mariota was good in this game. Again, context is everything. And Detroit, understood that defensively, they didn't really need to do much complex because offensively, they were going to be able to name their number. But I thought Mariota, for the most part, did a good job. Nothing spectacular. This wasn't an offensive game that you're going to, wow, they were really good offensively. No, but they were clean offensively. And Mariota, took advantage of A, the team being clean offensively around him. B, I thought Cliff did a better job. He did try to run the ball. They did try some play action off of it. They did throw in some quick game. But Mariota was 16 of 22 for 213, ran 5 times for 22 yards. He didn't make a mistake. He was, inaccurate on a few third downs, and they were not very good on third down. Maybe took a sack of the 2 or 3 that he took that may have been on him. But Mariota is what this team needs in that role. He is accepting of the role. He's an excellent backup. He is a capable starter, especially in this system. I gave him, a B plus, A minus. I didn't think it could be any worse than a B plus in the game. I have no idea what the advanced numbers graded him as, but I thought that he played well. Again, I think there's a lot of context. And a lot of the, for him, it was a clean game, unlike the game he played against Kansas City, which was pretty good. But around him, Debo dropped that pass. It turned into an interception. They had, fourth down misses. They had some penalties. Jaden played in a game last week where they were making first downs, but they had multiple 15-yard penalties early in the game against their offense. Drops all season long, turnovers. Even in the game, even in the last game where they played well and won, the Chargers game, they had a crucial turnover in the fourth quarter when Bill fumbled that almost cost them. Mariota was on the list of things that I liked from the game. And then, I did make a note that Quinn took Mariota out of the game. He could have been a series or two late. Who's counting at this point? But because of Jaden's status, which we know now is not as serious as perhaps, some indicated maybe early on it could be, we're glad to have Mariota as a backup, and he needs to be protected in a blowout loss as well. Yeah. So they took him out and put Josh Johnson in to hand the ball off. They could have just had Mariota hand it off at the end, but you can't run, the stuff that they were doing on Jaden's final drive against Seattle. 2 dropbacks and then an RPO. That was silly, really. Not protective, not smart. And he took Mariota out of the game because he needs Mariota to start perhaps the next 2 at the very least. All right, the list of things that I did not like, and it's really one more than anything else, but I'm going to give you some numbers about the defense that I think are borderline historic for one football game. We'll do that next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right. Happy Tuesday, everybody, and happy Veterans Day. Thank you to all who served and give us our freedom each and every day. Some breaking news from the NBA world. The Dallas Mavericks are planning to fire general manager Nico Harrison, the architect of the Luka Doncic trade, now no longer in charge less than 1 year after the trade was made. Last night, an absolute slugfest of a Monday Night Football matchup between the Packers and Eagles. First game since 2023 where teams went into the half tied at 0. Not much other scoring to speak of. The Eagles built up a 10-0 lead in the fourth quarter off a Devontae Smith touchdown, and their defense did not give that lead back. Josh Jacobs scores late. Final score 10-7, Philadelphia. Also last night, the Washington Wizards with another late collapse as they fall to the Detroit Pistons in overtime. 13-point lead in the fourth quarter for Washington and a 5-point lead with 4.2 seconds remaining. And the Wizards somehow collapse and fall in overtime. Final score 137-135. Tonight, the Caps, they get underway in Carolina, taking on the Hurricanes. No Pierre-Luc Dubois for the Caps. He'll be out for a while after having surgery on his abdomen. He'll be out 3 to 4 months, hopefully back before the playoffs. Logan Thompson expected to be in net tonight. Pre-game coverage gets going over on 106.7 The Fan at 6:45. Katie Florio, John Walton, and Ken Sabern take you all the way to puck drop at 7. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all of football season. Don't forget, hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
still have to figure out who you guys are and what you want to be.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we should shy away from that. I think that's the truth. And I think that's transparency. And at the end of the day, in order to get things going in the right direction, you have to be transparent. You have to be honest. And I don't think we are who we think we are. So with that being said, it's a quick turnaround. It's a trip to Europe. It's an opportunity for us to kind of dive in together. I believe in this brotherhood. I believe in the guys in the locker room. But like I said, there's got to be a sense of urgency, and I think our guys feel that.
That was Marcus Mariota after the game. Yeah, I don't know what they think of themselves now, but it's certainly not what anybody thought they would be before the season began. All right. Just because I was out yesterday, just continuing with my game take. And then, look, phone lines will open in 15 minutes at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. The big change, obviously, post the loss to Detroit is that Joe Witt Jr. is no longer the defensive coordinator. He's been demoted. Dan Quinn is taking over those responsibilities. You'll hear more sound from what Quinn said yesterday on his decision to take over the defensive coordinator responsibilities. Of course, that means Joe Witt Jr. is not going to be the defensive coordinator next year. And we'll start having those conversations about the direction in which Washington should go, defensive coordinator, when the season ends. This was, from the beginning, and we don't know anything for the most part, but we do know that there's no chance that the culpability for Joe Witt Jr. over a game resume, not just a 2 or a 3 game resume, over a 30 game resume, is not 0%. It had to be, a significant part of it. We debated all off season. Was the results in 2024 more about the coordinator or more about the personnel? And I think, now that we've got 30 games of his, and personnel's been a major issue this year because of the injuries. The opponents have been a major problem with, obviously a skeleton crew that you're putting out there. But we've got a 30-game resume that says the results have been bad and sometimes just brutally awful, like Sunday's game against Detroit. All right, so let me wrap up my, game take, because I didn't have a chance to do it yesterday, with the things that I didn't like. And look, this is all about the defense. You'd be hard-pressed to find a game or two this year in the NFL that was as bad defensively as Washington's game was Sunday against Detroit. Take out, a couple of red zone stops. Detroit was 4 for 6 in the red zone. The defense was in complete and utter shambles from the start. The Lions had a lot to do with it. They're really good offensively, and the last 2 opponents have been very difficult to match up with for a defense that is a shell in terms of the personnel of what they wanted out on the field. But also, it's got to be more than that when it's as easy as it was on Sunday. 7-on-7, basically, for the entire game. Like just, passing 7-on-7, environment, pitch and catch, nobody near anybody. That was really quite remarkable, is how many times there was a receiver who caught the ball and said, "Where is everybody? Where's the defender? He's back over here," or they mixed up and they're all over here. It was bad. And this is the stat that I've been promising you that I think, I don't know, man. I'm sure that there's something else out there. I haven't seen it. By the way, several of you linked to me, and I appreciate this. I can't believe I forgot about it. Washington's stretch in the Giant and Cincinnati games last year, where they didn't punt and they didn't turn the ball over. They had a couple of kneel downs in those games, and those do count as drives statistically. But, in the Cincinnati game, they basically had 8 scoring drives and 2 kneel downs. Pretty damn impressive in that 38-33 win over the Bengals. And in the Giant game, remember, it was all field goals, 7 field goals in that game, but they had a kneel down or 2 in that game as well. So, Yeah, the Lions were 8 for 8 on their drives to start the game, and then they ran the clock out on their ninth. But here's the thing that, to me seems almost impossible to pull off. On the Lions' first 7 drives of the game, based on their starting field position, there were 536 possible yards available. I had it wrong Sunday night on my podcast. I think it was like 12 yards off. I went back and, did the math and took my time with it this time and got the actual. So what I mean by that is if they took over from their own 30, they had 70 yards available to them on that specific drive. So if you take the first 7 drives of the game, based on where they started field position wise, there were 536 yards available to the Lions. They got 522 of those 536 yards. 97% plus of the yards available to them, they got. I don't know what that means in terms of like a record, the percentage of yards available, drive success, etc. I'm sure somebody's done it. But it's one way to describe something that's almost impossible to describe because the defense was so unimaginably awful on Sunday. But that's one way to describe it. 536 available yards, and they got 522 of them on their first 7 drives. They did have an 8th and a 9th drive, which is why there were more yards. The 8th drive, they got a field goal. The 9th drive, they just ran out the clock. The final numbers, 44 points, 546 total yards, 8 yards per play. As I said before, good God, 8 yards per play, 5 for 10 on third down, 2 for 2 on fourth down. When you see teams that score 44, typically when teams are like above 38 points in a game, it is because there was a short field or two, because of a turnover on downs, etc. You didn't have a lot of that on Sunday. You didn't have any of that from the offense. Anyway, Washington didn't sniff a takeaway with the exception of a Luvu tip pass that hung in the air. The Kinlaw had a brief shot at it, but he wasn't going to get it. This was, by the way, another game without a takeaway. They're now tied for the second fewest in the league. The teams behind, the one team behind them, the Jets, they're far behind. They played one fewer game, though, to be fair. Green Bay had a takeaway last night. They now have the exact number Washington has, which is 6. So, like I said in the open, it's really hard to get a takeaway of the football when you're not near the football. And on Sunday, literally at times, they weren't near the football. That was every week it's, pretty much consistent. They can't cover, they can't rush the passer, they can't stop the run, they can't tackle well. But what was alarming to me, and I'd have to watch the all 22, which I'm not interested in doing this week. We'll get the Suter film breakdown tomorrow. But 10 to 15 yards was like the average distance, I thought, between receiver and defender. There was a 2nd and 8 in the fourth quarter where Goff threw out into the flat to Amon-Ra. And I thought that there were at least 15, if not 18 yards between him and the closest defender. This was the play where I thought he looked surprised when he caught it, as if the play had been whistled dead for some reason. Like he looked around and said, where is everybody? Like that's a pitch and catch close to the line of scrimmage. That's where typically the defenders are the closest to the receiver. No, there was a 4th and 1 to Raymond where I just couldn't believe how open he was. Like they must have thought that it was 1st and 10 or not 4th and 1, something other than 4th and 1. We had another, Three Stooges, mix up with 2 defenders running into each other. Not that Detroit even needed that on Sunday. And like in the moment after the game or during the game, I was just like, I don't understand this. It's not normal. Like we all know bad defensive football, but this was like abnormal looking. Like it can't be right. Like you got to do something about it. Watching Jahmyr Gibbs, by the way, against our team run for 9.5 yards per carry, 9.5. It just reminded me of that playoff game. I mean, good God, what was Ben Johnson thinking back on January 18th? Seriously, that was a big mistake. Gibbs averaged 10 yards per carry in the first half of that playoff game. And by taking it out of his hands, they ended up putting it more into Goff's hands or Jamison Williams, remember, on the double pass, and they just turned it over too much. And that's why they lost the game. That and the fact they couldn't stop, Jaden and the offense. But Gibbs getting more than the 14 carries he got in the playoff game, if he had gotten, say, 8 more carries in the game, the score and the game would have been different. I'm not saying Detroit would have won the game. It would have been different, though, no doubt. I mean, how about just how bad the run defense was? It was like Gibbs didn't even see anybody until he got to the second level and didn't feel anybody contact-wise until he was at the third level. Now, the overall defensive day was horrific, and it was definitely also undisciplined. Quan Martin getting penalized. His quote after was, "I was pulled to the ground and," quote, "kicked in the nuts," closed quote. Okay. Javon Kinlaw said that he lost his cool and got flagged 15 yards because he saw Amon-Ra hit Daron Payne first, and that's when Payne retaliated. And Kinlaw called it, quote, "some BS," closed quote. So, yeah, number one on the list of things that were just, I mean, this was easy. This was truly one of the most horrific defensive performances you will ever see in an NFL game. It's hard to be any worse. And again, I understand the context. They have a shell of the team that they expected to have out there. We've obviously identified, people who are reasonable and know football understand injuries are a reality, and they are the number one reason this team is having a terrible season right now. They have been catastrophically hit by the injury bug, but it doesn't explain everything on defense. They were non-resistant. There was zero resistance. There was zero. We saw the effort in the first half against Kansas City. This was disorganized, discombobulated, and disinterested. It just was. And that's why immediately following the game, I said, Dan Quinn needs to understand that not doing something, whether it's right or wrong, like they might behind closed doors be saying, look, people don't understand what Joe's working with. This is not all on him. It's everything. But at that point, after one of the worst defensive performances that you can actually witness an NFL team put out there, it wasn't just that they were getting moved on by an excellent team. It was that no one was near people when they caught the ball. I mean, for crying out loud, Jamison Williams did a backflip on a slant where he scored. He knew he could do not a backflip. He knew he could do a flip into the end zone because there was nobody near him. It wasn't like he was going to land near somebody. I mean, that's embarrassing. In terms of specific players, there was one player for me, one that stood out as this dude legitimately is trying to ball out. Jacob Martin, the guy Steve Suter has said for 4 or 5 weeks running right now is one of their best defensive players. Nobody tries harder than him. He had maybe the only pressure that forced Goff into an incompletion. Yeah, I mean, Dan Quinn understood that it had reached a point, especially after that performance, where not doing something was going to fall back on him in a way that made him look weak, feckless. So he did something about it. You can say it's too late, but he did something about it after truly an embarrassing situation defensively, not just recently, but really over now 30 games. That's the bottom line, is this can't just be about the last 2 games. It's got to be about the 30. Okay? Joe Witt Jr. seems like a hell of a guy. Dan Quinn was loyal to him, gave him an opportunity. It didn't work out. Whether it's all on him, partially on him, or very little on him. Some of it's on him, and eventually the resume speaks for itself. And there are a lot of reasons for it. Again, there's context, understood. But this defense has not been good since he took it over. The other things on my list of things that I didn't like, the third down offense wasn't great, 2 for 10. They were 3 for 3 on fourth down. They also had a 3rd and 15 in which Mariota checked it down over the middle of the field for better field goal range on their first field goal. I thought that was a smart play. He missed some things for sure, accuracy-wise on third down. But again, I had Mariota on the good list. I thought he played at a B+, A- level. Also, the last thing on the list of things I didn't like when they punted, when they were down 35-16. Was it 35-16? And it was a 4th and 3. I don't care where the football is. Just go for it. Why punt? I have another thing that kind of should have been on the list of things that I didn't like, but I'll just include it in sort of the other column, and I'll get to that when we come back. And then it's your turn. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Reaction to the game Sunday, reaction to the situation at 3-7, reaction to Joe Witt Jr. being demoted. I'm not sure if it's going to look a lot different with the personnel they have, but I'm glad Quinn did something. Maybe it was too late. Maybe it was certainly 10 games too late. Maybe this change should have happened during the offseason. There was certainly ample evidence that Witt Jr. could have been part of the problem last year. All right, Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. few other defensive numbers. The why per like things like EPA, expected points added. They're the third worst in the league in per play EPA. They're still just barely behind Dallas and Cincinnati. They've had Washington had a couple of those games early that we talked about in the moment, the Giant game, the Raider game, even the Charger game, where it was potentially misleading because of the offensive line issues that those teams had. And Washington hadn't yet, at least in those first two, suffered all of the injuries that they've had on defense. So they're still like the third worst defense, through now 10 games in the league behind Dallas and Cincinnati. They've closed the gap on Dallas. They're pretty close to being the second worst in expected points added per play. And in total EPA, they're also third, but again, really close to passing Dallas to become the second worst defense in the NFL behind Cincinnati. Cincinnati's having an historically awful season defensively. Washington, though, is gaining steam for sure. In the last 4 games, Washington's allowed the second most yards per play. They lead the league in opponent passing yards per attempt at 8.4 yards per pass attempt in the last 4 games, and they're giving up the 4th most points per game as well. All right, just a couple of other observations, and then we'll get to your phone calls. So something happened twice during the game that some of you have reached out to me about earlier in the year. I know we talked about this last year because it happened last year too. I think Sabah actually reached out to me about this, but Detroit intentionally on 2 different occasions kicked the ball out of bounds. And people are like, "Whoa, you get the ball at the 40." No, that's not the rule. The rule is if you kick the ball out of bounds, the returning team gets the ball 25 yards from where it was kicked off. So the normal kickoff spot of the 35-yard line, if you kick it out of bounds, 25 yards is the 40. But when you kick it off from the 50 after a 15-yard penalty on the score or the PAT, and the team decides to take it on the kickoff, now if you intentionally kick the ball out of bounds, 25 yards from the 50 is the 25-yard line. It happened a few times last year with the touchback being the 30. It's happened more this year with the touchback being the 35. And so, yeah, if you can say, hey, you get the ball to start at your own 25-yard line, that is less than the average, which I think is like the 27 or the 28-yard line this year, average starting field position. With the new kickoff rule. The new kickoff rule has done what it designed with the tweak in the offseason to move the touchback out to the 35-yard line. We've seen, obviously an exponential increase in kickoff returns, an exponential increase in kickoff return yardage, and a significant increase in terms of the average starting field position. So that's just a bit of a loophole, I guess, that, which is why, sometimes teams – after the other team score will be like, well, if I, take an unsportsmanlike here, it's really not going to hurt us. They're going to kick it through the end zone anyway. No, you're losing field position yards by doing that because the other team, if they're smart, is going to kick the ball out of bounds intentionally. Again, the rule being 25 yards from the kickoff spot, not the automatic 40. And I think people were confused about that and that rule as to why Washington on 2 different occasions got it from their own 25-yard line after Detroit intentionally kicked the ball out of bounds after Washington was assessed 15-yard penalties, which they took on the kickoff. One of those 15-yard penalties they took on the 2-point conversion when it was 20-3 and they got the 2 points. Of course they were going to get it. They could have gotten 2 points every single time on every score because there was no resistance. Speaking of 2-point plays, I don't, it's not even about the score necessarily. I just don't think you run 2-point conversions with your starting quarterback who's got to be your starting quarterback for the next couple of weeks when you're down 41-22 with, whatever the time was left, 5 minutes, 6 minutes left in the game. The game is over. All you're doing by doing that is maybe wasting a 2-point conversion play that you like for an insignificant moment. There's not a chance to get back into the game. Even if you complete it, it's 41-24. That's still 3 scores. You're still 3 scores away. The truth is that kicking was the right thing to do. 41-22, get at 41-23 is really no different than 41-22. You're going to need 2 touchdowns. You're going to need at least 1 2-point conversion and a field goal. And I just think that was like stupid to do. Silly. And by the way, on the 2-point conversion, Mariota got sacked. He got sacked. I mean, and there was a penalty. Remember, there was a defensive holding penalty, so they got it from the 1, and then Krosky Merritt got hit and didn't get it in. He got twisted up like a pretzel on that play. Like, what are you doing? Don't run a 2-point play when the game's over. Put your kicker out there so that there's a much less chance of getting a significant player on your team hurt. I don't think when you're getting your ass kicked that much in the moment and the emotion attached to it, I don't think you think about those things. You're like, let's just get as many points as we can. I mean, let's make this score look as respectable as we can. No, you should not do that. Don't do that. There was no mathematical reason to do it at 41-22. All right, at that point. And the game was over. It's over. You're not coming back with 6 minutes to go down by 17 against that team who literally you cannot get off the field. If you had 2 of your defenses out on the field with the players you have, you wouldn't have been able to stop them. So I just did not think that was very bright. The first 2-point conversion was at 32-10. So you're trying to get it to 32-18. Okay. I mean, but again, you're wasting maybe a 2-point conversion play that you like in a game in which you cannot win that game. You're not winning that game. Sorry. Unless Detroit, look, I gave Washington out as a smell test pick. Smell test, once again, a winning weekend, 6-4-2, although the pros 2-3. Anyway, 2-2-1 or 2-3-1, whatever it was. I wanted, at 32-16, I'm like, no, just kick it. Let's try to get another one. Then you can go for 2, and maybe we can lose by 8, and I can get the cover or the push. It was never going to happen, and I knew it early on, unless Detroit fumbled snaps or there were penalties. But God, they would have needed 2 15-yard penalties on a drive. They would have needed like 1st or 2nd and 30 to get stopped, because a 2nd and 15 or a 2nd and 20 wasn't going to get them off the field. But that last one, that's just silliness. It doesn't make any sense score-wise, and you're just having your offense with your quarterback, and he got sacked on the play. Imagine he got hurt on that play, and in Madrid, it's Josh Johnson. So I thought that was silly. Lots more injuries. We know that from this game, of course. That's a weekly standard. They ran 2 plays at the end of the first quarter when they could have let the clock run out. Personally, I would have let the clock run out because you wanted the game to be shorter with fewer plays rather than longer and more plays in a game like this one. But, yeah, that's kind of all I have on sort of the other. Max, can you add to my recap of Sunday's game in any kind of meaningful way?
No, it sucked. That's pretty much it. That's all I have. I mean, there's nothing you can do. A lot of these issues seem unfixable for the time being and going forward. It feels like a burned season at this point. So you might as well start playing the young guys and kind of just retool and look ahead to next year. But, got to play the games out, got to see where you fall after the bye week. Hopefully you can get a win in Madrid. But other than that, it hurts to be a fan right now. It just sucks.
Yeah. I mean, look, the good news, if there is any good news, they've made the switch. So we now know there will be a new defensive coordinator next year. And that's going to be a crucial hire. We get a chance to see what Dan Quinn looks like as a defense. Look, it's better for Dan Quinn to take over these responsibilities
Very much.
after facing Kansas City, Seattle, and Detroit, right? Not that Miami isn't capable offensively. They've got incredible team speed, as we know, and they've been playing better offensively as of late. But then, you got Minnesota and J.J. McCarthy, or no, you got Denver, then Minnesota. He's got a better shot for the defense to look more professional, would be the nice way to put it, because they're not facing these dynamic, explosive, ridiculously difficult to defend even for good defenses, offensive football teams. Yeah. And look, going away probably this week is the best thing for them. This Madrid game, not exactly what we thought it would be. But yeah, play better Sunday. Give a better overall effort. See a defender within 15 yards of a receiver when he catches the football. Just try occasionally to not let the running back get to level 3 before we see anybody near him. Bad. Also, by the way, the fan I've been of Daron Payne over the years in terms of his talent and the frustration I've had as a Daron Payne fan, because he has lacked the consistency. He has lacked the game-to-game, week-to-week kind of professional effort required of just any player, let alone a player with talent. I think we have probably seen some of the last of Daron Payne. I'm not saying he's not going to come back and play for this team for sure, but I would put the chances of him playing for this team next year at 10%. 10%. All right, let's get started on the phones. Let's start with Jay, who's calling from Omaha. Jay, go ahead.
What up, Kevin? Man, Dan Quinn waited too late to make this change, and I think maybe we get a win, you know what I mean, in Madrid, and he's able to rally the defense, but I just think it's too late. I mean, we have too many players hurt, and like Mariota said, I don't think we are who we think we should have been coming into the season, and especially halfway through the season. So, I mean, I really think.
Look, from Quinn's standpoint, let's just assume that he kind of made the decision after the Bears game. Let's just say it's after the Bears game, okay? And he looked at Dallas and their offense, the Chiefs, the Seahawks, and the Lions, and he said, yeah, I'll take this thing over after the Detroit game. Because the truth is, you could have had, Richie Pettibone coordinating the defense for the last 4 weeks with the players they were putting on the field, and it was going to be ugly.
Exactly.
It wasn't going to be pretty.
Exactly. So I really don't get why he delegated coming into the season. And in his press conference, he said he's been my right-hand guy, and they've been rocking together. And I really do trust him when he says that. So why not come into the season calling the plays? Because you already you've been saying,
making another hire at defensive coordinator. Joe Witt Jr.'s season last year, forget the final numbers. We know how bad they were in a lot of games. And last year was really about stopping the run. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But why
people focused on, they had a great pass defense. That's because teams just lined it up and ran it against them all year long last year.
Well, Kevin, like you've been saying, we don't have the players, and it's very appalling to see other teams draft and develop players, and we keep missing. And it's not just the Ron Rivera. It's now Adam Peters. He has to show us that he can get this roster to where it needs to be to compete with Jaden.
Yeah.
And he didn't show us that coming into the
season. Roster is not the roster that anybody anticipated them putting on the field this year. Thanks for the call. I want to get to some other callers. Look, I there's just zero chance you guys are going to convince me that it's time to move on from Adam Peters or Dan Quinn. I've said this the entire season, and I promise you I will not change my mind until maybe next season, late in the season. I know what it looked like when he came in. I know what they produced in their first year. Did you forget? And I know what they've had to deal with this year in terms of a catastrophic season from an injury standpoint. The Joe Witt Jr. thing has always been on the table for me because it was bad last year and because he has no track record of having been a defensive coordinator. And you're in a moment, heading into the season where you want to feel like you got a chance and you got to have everybody on board that you feel confident in. Quinn's loyalty to Witt Jr. perhaps hurt them defensively coming into the season. I will certainly entertain that. And I'll entertain that as a mistake that Dan Quinn made. But there is no way on earth you're going to get me to say something as idiotic as fire Adam Peters and fire Dan Quinn. Like, I was here all last year. I saw what they did. I saw the culture change. And there's no way after a season like this one, which you would attribute this year, number one, unless you are completely a novice to watching football. Number one, to the number of injuries they had this year, which is not controllable unless you want to say, oh, they practice too softly or this or that. You don't know that. You don't know it any more than, another fan of another team knows that they practice differently than everybody else. If you want to blame management on Terry, we'll just agree to disagree on that. But if you don't recognize what injuries have done to this team this year, you're just trying to hang on to a point that you made before the year and trying to look right. That's the number one reason they're in this bind. Now, as I've said, I don't know that injuries alone have been the problem defensively. And that's why I've been open to a Joe Witt Jr. discussion for several weeks now. Okay, so that's different. The defense is so bad and looks so disorganized at times. And yeah, it's opponent, it's injury related. Those things all come together. They just played in back-to-back weeks 2 killer, elite offensive football teams. Okay? I mean, Seattle had 35, 38 points at halftime. I know there were a couple of defensive touchdowns in there, but they were not stopped offensively by a team that had just won a game on Monday night. And by the way, had slowed down a really good offensive football team in Dallas on Monday Night Football. Arizona, I'm talking about. So all of those things, like, you've got to, if you're being reasonable, you got to take everything into consideration. With that said, the one thing that I've been adamant about, and I will say we were certainly concerned about heading into this year, is were they going to be any different defensively than they were last year? Because they weren't good defensively last year. And this year, I will say that even without the injuries, even if Dorrance Armstrong and Dietrich Wise and Will Harris and Lattimore and Jonathan Jones and all of these different players, if they're on the field healthy for all the games, I still, based on what we've seen, don't think that the defense was going to be significantly improved. I don't. I think we saw signs early that they would have been a better run-stopping team, and I think that's fair because I think Kinlaw was a good addition. I think Wise was a good addition, and I think Dorrance Armstrong was really coming into his own. So I think that there would have been, more results from a run-stopping standpoint than they had last year. And they've become a terrible run-stopping team in recent weeks without those players. I still think we would have been chasing overall offensive perfection to overcome a subpar defense. But we wouldn't have been chasing offensive perfection to overcome one of the league's 2 worst defenses without all of the injuries. But look, the coaching change, the demotion of Joe Witt Jr., sure, I'm on board for dinging Dan Quinn on perhaps not making this decision much earlier, and considering that it should have perhaps been made before the season began. I'd like to see what Dan Quinn can do. He's going to do it against lesser opponents than we've just seen, although Miami's capable and Denver is certainly capable. Yeah. All right, I see everybody on hold. We'll get to all of you next and beyond. We'll finish up this rest of the hour with your calls at 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, we're free and live on the Odyssey app, and you can watch us on our Team 980 YouTube channel. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button when you get there.
Hey Dan, as taking over for defensive play calling here, what type of an impact do you think you can make?
Going into his tough decision, Scott, obviously, to go into that. I'm hopeful that we'll see, kind of the execution, the consistency that we're searching for. And that's number one, top of the pile to get that part right. We've been digging for it. We haven't had it. We haven't found it. And so that type of consistency and execution, Scott, that's what I'm after. And that's the only reason behind the move. So that's what I'm going to have to chase first.
You got to play the beginning of that answer again, because it sounds like he just pauses and he's like, oh, what am I going to say? How does anybody realize we don't have any players on defense? Play the beginning of that again.
Hey, Dan, as taking over for, defensive play calling here, what type of an impact do you think you can make?
Going into his tough decisions.
It's that extra breath. That
was good. That was good. I haven't watched it. I'm going to go back and watch it to see the facial expression. Look, he had to do this. And of course, we talked about it all off season. Is this the issue with the, what was it? Personnel, coordinator. It's even hard to identify now, like a pie chart of blame on this just abysmal defensive football team. But that part of the pie is the coordinator. That, I don't know, at least a third of it has to be. They weren't even close on Sunday. And it's got a 30-game track record here, he does, of basically stinking most of the time on defense. But it's not like with what they have personnel-wise, they're going to turn into the 85 Bears overnight. But again, for Quinn, at least he's not facing Seattle and Detroit and Kansas City in the next three. All right, 301-230-0980. Peter in Kensington. Peter, go ahead.
All right, I'm going to go through mine pretty quickly as I can. You can bounce back afterwards. First of all, talking about defense. Everybody's talking about no talent, no talent, no talent. Well, I look around the league, all these other not necessarily competitive teams, they're making defensive with no name. They don't have star talent, but they're doing pretty well on defense compared to us. So I don't think it's all no talent. It's about making talent. Right?
Nobody said it was all no talent.
Well, it's part of the equation. Just
yeah,
like
no doubt. But he did not. There was no chicken salad made out of chicken. You know what? At any point last year or this year, no doubt. Your point taken.
All right. Second thing, and this is moving on to offense. I'm not like you. I'm not a pro football player, but it seems to me some of those running plays, and I'm talking about the whole season, not just the last games. Some of these running plays, I see the same play over and over and over again, not working, running right off tackle, right off tackle, right off tackle. And same with these screens. So where is any kind of play variation, okay? And maybe the variation is subtle and I'm not seeing it, but I think it should be more dramatic. The next thing is with J5. Okay, we all love him. We all saw how great he was last year. But here's what I'm seeing now, and I don't know what the reason is. I'm not denying his talent, but I saw a lot of hesitation on his throws. He's not going to throw it unless the guy's wide open. Well, none of our receivers are getting separation, so they're never going to be open. Second thing is he seems a little bit too quick to run, okay? And then, worst of all, when I saw him in the stands a couple of weeks ago, he was laughing and smiling.
Not in the stands, on the sideline, you mean?
Kicked. Yeah, it's like unacceptable. You don't do that, okay? Game face, okay? And then the other thing is about
all right, last thing.
Quigley, or Dan Quinn, rather. I like Dan Quinn. I wanted Vrabel back when they picked, and I think Dan Quinn can turn around. It's tough being in this situation. It's like, what the heck do I do? But I like a coach to be a coach. Man up. I want to see you bark a few times and growl, not try to make friends with everybody. But it happens. So,
okay.
Yeah,
good call. Good call, Peter. By the way, I was a big fan of Vrabel as well, but Vrabel was taking that year off. But I would have been aggressive. And remember, a lot of people were saying retread. And then when they hired Quinn, retread. But couple of things, your running game comment, I don't know. I liked that they tried it more in this game. They went heavy personnel early with Rodriguez. I like Rodriguez. He had a 9-yard run that was a lot of him. Yeah, it just hadn't been good enough. I mean, they were top 3 in the league in rush offense there early in the season, but part of that, like last year, was the quarterback being involved as a scrambler as much as he was or anything else, and that counts as rush yards. Krosky Merritt obviously had more opportunities, and some of that were the teams that they were playing and the context of the game. When you're getting your ass kicked, you don't keep running the football when you're down 21. That's just not the way it works. Ironically, though, against Seattle, I think they ran the ball more when they were way down than they did earlier in the game. But yeah, look, they've played, in back-to-back weeks, 2 excellent rush defense football teams. And that's part of it, but it's not all of it. I would agree with you on the Jaden thing. You're just not going to get me worked up. I mentioned, about the smiling and the laughing when they were getting the ass kicked. It's not the best look, but there is, when I talk to people that are closely associated to this thing, the last concern they have about anything is him. Just so everybody knows, there is no talk of regression out there about him. There's an understanding of the context of everything. Yeah, I think, there were some moments where he could have let the ball go in that game against Seattle. No doubt about it, and he didn't do it. Let's go to Little. Little, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Kevin, thank you for taking my call. Shout out to Mad Max. Coach,
Yep.
I'm going to give you 4 reasons that I'm seeing, and I'm going to give you 2 stats that's going to have you scratching your head. I'm bald-headed, too. I scratching my head about this stuff, this stat I picked up. Hey, look here, man, moving forward, like you say, it's play call. I like you call them. You call it iron, say fire them all, get rid of all of them. But I'm thinking both coordinators got to go. And I'm hoping the Giants pick up Kingsbury, to be honest. Kevin, play calling on both sides of the ball. I'm going to give you a stat you ain't going to believe. We got a total of 5 holding calls on running. And we got one holding call running the ball with 8 yards.
There weren't 5 holding calls on Sunday.
No, I'm just saying total.
Oh, total for the season?
Total.
For the season.
Running the ball total. The whole season, 10 games.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the stat? 5 holding calls running it, and how many passing it? Sorry.
16
yeah.
total.
Okay.
The ball. Okay, now here's the stat that got me scratching my head. We ain't got but one holding call with a yard with a yard gain over 8 yards. How many times have we seen Kingsbury start the game off, or even in the middle of the game, when he get an 8 yard on the first down and then he pass on second,
right.
pass on third, then we 3 and out. He started the game off like that Sunday. Okay, now here we go again. Moving forward, how many times have you seen Kingsbury throw out through the flat after it worked? How many times have you seen him go to the counter trade since the California game, since the Chargers game? We ain't even went back to the counter trade. See, it's the play calling that got me a little bit confused.
Okay.
And
just so you know, I'm looking at offensive holding stats right now because there's a site that tracks them. Washington's got 10 total. That's actually first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. It's tied for 9th best in the league. So I don't know where your stats came from, but now it's possible. Let me see. Go ahead. Yes.
You just came up with a better stat than I came up with because
it's accurate versus yours that was inaccurate.
Right. I was inaccurate. Okay, now here we go. Here we go again. Play calling. Like you say, we got Bill on the 2 yard line going for a 2 yard play. Why we ain't got Rodriguez in the game?
Right.
He plugged it in there a couple of plays before.
I didn't think Krosky Merritt ran that poorly. Rodriguez's numbers were. Well, I didn't think either running back were the problem. Yeah.
He shouldn't have been in the game, coach, if they're going to give him the ball at the 2 yard line.
Right.
He's so wet. He's 195 pounds, soaking wet. Now, here we go. Now, now I'm going to get off the line after this because I want y'all to pay attention to this.
All right, quickly.
Thursday, I'm going to have somebody from MTV, one of the producers, to call the Junkie Show. We're trying to get the junkies on Adult Swim, man. Kevin, they're millionaires now, but if they get on Adult Swim, they become billionaires.
I don't know what you're talking about, Adult Swim. Sorry. Let's move on. Real quickly, though, on the penalty stats. So there's a site that tracks this for, any kind of penalty you want. Offensive holding. Right now, Washington for the season has 10 offensive holding penalties called against them and accepted. They do have 6 that were called against them that were declined, but 10 that were accepted, and that is the 9th fewest in the league. All right, so it's not, like if you want to know, Buffalo actually has the most holding penalties called against them. Denver, Minnesota, Dallas, they're all up there in holding penalties. Yeah. What about, I would like to know about unsportsmanlike penalties. I don't see those on here. Let's go to Aveen. Aveen, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. I've always kind of viewed the Joe Witt talking points as being a bit inconsequential. And, maybe I'm off on this and maybe I have more information, but I've still always thought of this as being a Dan Quinn defense. And my understanding of, defensive head coaches, even, with all the reporting and, documentaries we have on Belichick and Tomlin, those guys don't call defensive plays, but they pretty much run those teams' defenses. When Belichick was the Patriots, he still played the biggest part in, formulating how they practiced, how they prepared, the week-to-week game planning, the personnel decisions. And I'm just I don't think we've ever really heard like how much, even when Witt was calling plays, how much was Quinn a part of the defensive room, and how much was he in charge of stuff. So
we do know this, Aveen. Let me just interrupt for a moment, and then I'll let you finish. We do know that Quinn talked a lot about when he got the job, what he had learned from his time off. And part of it was being more of a delegator and being, one of the things he wasn't going to do this go around was be a defensive head coach and play caller. So we do know that there was kind of this belief from him that, taking a bigger step back, not that he's a CEO coach, because he's involved in a lot of, I'm sure defensive stuff and certainly, game management stuff and game management decisions. But yeah, did he get more involved this year? Has he been more involved? I think we heard him say that a few weeks ago, but it's not an unfair, question to ask. How much of this defense has been Joe Witt Jr. or the combination of Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr.?
Yeah, and I'll just say, watching that, Monday night game last night, it can be hard to articulate like what is a well-coached defense, but you really do know it when you see it. And I just say, watching those defenses last night, I think the things you see, the hallmarks of a good coach defense is those guys are always in position where they need to be. In pass coverage, the windows are small. They pass things off seamlessly to each other. On run defense, everybody is filling a hole. And they always seem prepared for what the offense is going to throw at them. They seem to be able to anticipate in real time when the ball is snapped, what the play might be, just things like that. And we utterly fail at all those things. And I'll just end with this. We went into this season in win now mode. And, Quinn and Peters have earned a lot of good grace and goodwill from us. But they got to reevaluate this offseason and say, the way we viewed this defense and where we were and what we needed the past offseason, we were way off on. And if they go into next season and we're seeing the same stuff again, a lot of the same stuff, and this is like a bottom 10-ish, defense, then Quinn will be on the hot seat.
Yes. Yeah, a third straight season of a bad defensive football team that costs them, a season for sure. I think that, we're 10 games into this. Injuries by far and away the number one reason that they are 3-7. Now, with respect to how they've affected the defense in particular and what the difference would have been had they been healthy versus unhealthy, I'm skeptical of how much better the defense would have been than it was last year. Now, I do think, Aveen, we saw some signs with Kinlaw, Wise, and Armstrong in particular that they were going to be better against the run this year. That was the number one thing they needed to correct. So I do think had they been healthy for all these games, 10 games into it, we would have seen decent rush defense numbers. But I don't think the pass defense, I don't think the coverage would have been very good. I don't think the pass rush against better and healthier offensive lines would have been good enough. And so therefore my net of what it would have looked like what would have been better than it was last year, but not good enough based on the schedule they're playing to, give the offense a break, to give the offense an opportunity to not have to think about scoring on almost, 60, 70% of the drives. That's what I would say to that. Anyway, thanks for the call. As always, let's go to Rod in Landover. Rod, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Kevin? Man, I'm a fan like everybody else. I'm listening to everybody, man. We went into the season, man, thinking all we need is number 5 on the field and we'll be okay. Man, I'm going to tell you something. We learned that this is the NFL, man. You need more than just one player. You need more than just one second-year player. I look at Caleb Williams, Drake May, the guy out Denver. Man, these guys got a complete team. They got a running game. They got receivers. They got an O-line. They got a defense. We do not have that in Washington. All we have is Jaden Daniels. So until we get better players, until we get stronger, faster, smarter, whatever you got to do. I watched that game last night with Philly and Green Bay. It was a 10-7 game. Man, we could not be on the field with either one of those teams. Man,
well, we weren't in week 2. Yeah.
Man, look, Philly going to score about 50 points. It's almost like this team, it's almost, and I get coaching, all that stuff matter, but I'm more harder on the players, man, because the players are the ones out there playing. I mean, they missing tackles. They taking bad angles. You blitz, you don't get home. I mean, these guys, it almost seemed like they was bad last year. They worse this year. I mean, to me, it's just like these guys, when you look at good teams and then you look at our team, it's levels to this stuff, man. It depends on who you play. If you play Cleveland or somebody like that, you might look all right. You play the Giants, you might look all right. But when you play Green Bay, Detroit, Seattle, when you play in those teams, now you get the chance to measure how good your team really is. Man, these guys are not good at all. They slow. They can't keep up with running backs, whether it be a Bijan Robinson or any running back that got any level of speed.
It's a terrible defensive football team right now. Terrible.
They
now,
need, Kevin, they need players. I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to get off the phone. I hope they lose the rest of their game so they can get a top 3 or 4 pick. So my question is this. If they get a top pick, and I know we ways away from the draft, but this season is done. If they get a top pick, my question to you is, would you go after a top-notch offensive player like a receiver, or would you go for a top-notch defensive player looking at this team the way it is? Would you go for offense or defense if you were sitting there with
I mean, right now I would say defense, just because we are in the moment of watching just an absolute horrific defensive football team. But Rod, here's the thing. Like, during the offseason, okay, and this applies to many of you, the offseason concern more than anything else was they have got to improve their ability to stop the run. They're going to be playing better teams. They're going to be playing teams in which, you're not going to be facing second and third string quarterbacks. And they had an offense and one player in particular on offense that carried them to 14 wins, including 2 road playoff games, with a defense that couldn't stop the run, which is unusual because it was a bad run stopping team. So what did they do? Well, they went out and they signed Kinlaw. They signed a guy like Dietrich Wise to set the edge. They added to their secondary in the second round with second round pick Trey Amos. Did they do enough? Because we all were thinking pass rusher, good defensive player, edge setter, pass rusher combo in a draft that seemed to be loaded with defensive ends. They decided to go offensive line. They decided to, invest like they did. They invested significantly into the protection of their quarterback with another area of the team that we thought was sketchy, and that was the offensive line. Again, 2 off seasons isn't enough based on what they, came in with. But going into this season, very few thought that it was going to turn out this way. And the reason that very few thought it was going to turn out this way is the number one thing you can't predict before a season begins is injuries. and what your team's going to look like. This team would have been a better run-stopping team for sure with guys like Kinlaw and Wise out there, and John Baptiste even, who was the backup defensive end, and with healthier guys, including a guy like Will Harris at safety, and guys that would have been healthy for more of the year. Would it have made the difference in majorly upgrading the defensive football team? Because that was the number one mystery. Go back to all of our conversations, March, April, May, June, July, August. For me, it was, and I think for a lot of you, the one thing that I don't feel good about at this point, and I hope I'm wrong, is what's the defense going to be? It's got to be better than it was last year. We never had a chance to see if it would have been better than it was last year, but I will concede that my gut is that even if all of those players had stayed healthy, it wouldn't have been very good. It would have been better against the run, but it would not have been very good. I got a break, Rod. Thanks. Appreciate it. Those on hold, stay there. We'll get to more of your calls after this. If I didn't say it already, the appeal, I guess, of Deron Payne's one-game suspension was upheld. So he's out of the game on Sunday. Terry McLaurin is going to travel, is not going to play. Jaden is out. Traylon Burks is out. Cahoe is out. He had that concussion, and Trey Amos is done for the year. Those are just, the guys added to this year. Also from Phil writes, so if Joe Witt Jr. is done, do you have any names? I would first go to Mike McDonald's staff in Seattle and wonder if anybody on that staff is good enough to be a defensive coordinator. for Washington next year. You wonder if Kevin Stefanski and that staff survives because Jim Schwartz could potentially be available. Yeah, I guess those would be the places. Those are my immediate thoughts. I'm trying to think of ties to Dan Quinn. It really doesn't matter anymore. You need an outstanding defensive coordinator. You need that now, for next year. You can't mess around with, look, Joe Witt Jr. was a first-time try, so I'm not saying, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I would go to Mike McDonald's staff, though, in Seattle and see if there's anybody talented on that staff, for sure. I would certainly consider a guy like Jim Schwartz if he becomes available in the wake of a coaching change in Cleveland. He's not going to have a Myles Garrett to work with, that's for sure. Let's go to Gary in Upper Marlboro. Gary, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I got to take issue. I've heard you say this for the last several weeks. I don't think injuries are the number one reason why this team is having the season that it is. Okay.
What's number one?
You're kind of saying two different things. On the defense, you're saying that the injuries wouldn't matter. And
no, I didn't say that.
The other side,
I did not say that.
Matter with the run game.
I said the defense had the defensive, the injuries overall are the clear cut number one for me anyway. But what I said is I'm not so sure the defense, had it stayed completely healthy, would have been a lot better than last year's defense. Although I do believe it would have been a better run stopping defense than it was last year.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah. But I totally disagree. I think, I called your show and I called the other shows. I thought at the beginning of the season, they were at top of 7-10 team because of a lot of different things.
They were at top of what? They were top of what?
I said at best, they were a 7-win team
coming
into the season because of the schedule that they had. And the
looks like you might be wrong on that.
Yeah, I am wrong. Like I was wrong last year. I thought that they were going to be a 6-11 team, and last year they exceeded everyone's expectation. But the fact of the matter is, I think if everyone was totally healthy, even if we had Terry, I can't point to any losses that we had this year that may have been different. I mean, maybe people point to the Dallas game, but this is the same Dallas
Chicago and
team
Atlanta. Chicago and Atlanta, they might be a 5-5 football team right now.
Had they been healthy? Atlanta game, but I don't think the Chicago game would have been any different. I think that.
Well, they coughed up a fumble in pouring rain at the end of the game to lose.
That's true. But Chicago, if Chicago lost that game, they would be pointing to a bunch of boneheaded mistakes they made too.
Washington was -3 in the turnover margin that night. They had 3 and Chicago had none.
But Chicago had a lot of dumb penalties that caused.
Look, you asked me what it would have been different. I'd say they'd be 5-5. I'd say it'd be a 2-game difference.
Okay, all right. I think I think maybe at best they have another victory. The Atlanta game.
We're quibbling at this point.
But I think that's the big thing. And Joe Witt, I don't think Joe Witt should have been fired. I do agree with the demotion.
He didn't get fired. He got demoted.
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't agree that he should have been fired.
Right.
I said I agree with the demotion.
Okay.
And I think that the mistake, everything needs to be pointed at Adam Peters or Josh Harris. And the reason why I say that is somebody should have been the adult in the room last year and said, listen, we had a great season, but we were not an NFC championship level team. Okay, we still have a lot of hope.
Not an NFC championship level defense, that's for sure, which in part made them a non-NFC championship team. I can go with that. They needed a lot to go right to get where they got, although they did win 2 road playoff games.
They did. They won a road playoff game against Tampa Bay, and they had the equivalent of a butt fumble in that game that changed the whole momentum of that game, if you recall. And in Detroit, we're blaming injuries on our season this year. How many players did they have out?
They lost a lot, but it was at the end of last year, remember, too. It was towards the end.
Yeah. But, Detroit, though, they were mangled on defense. And that was mainly the reason why they lost that game.
Yeah, big part of it.
So I just think that – and the reason why I say Josh Harris or Adam Peters, if Adam Peters went into that season thinking we're a player or two away, then shame on him. And the only reason why I say Josh Harris is Josh Harris may have been the one to tell him, no, you go for it.
Is that what you want? You want
give
your
up all
owner
these
in
draft picks.
getting involved in
No,
the
I'm
general
saying,
manager's
I
decision
don't.
making?
No. Kevin, listen to me for a second. I said it's either Josh Harris or Adam Peters. What I'm saying is if Adam Peters went into this season saying, yeah, I think that we need to stick to the plan. Let's have a slow build. And if Josh Harris then stepped in and say, no, we were one game away. You go get these players. You give up the draft picks. You go get these players so we can try to win the Super Bowl next year. So it's on either one of them. I have full confidence in Dan Quinn as a coach. I do.
Okay.
But it's either Harris or it's Adam Peters' fault, the reason why we're here today.
Right. But I would say, and again, agree to disagree on your very first point. Josh Harris and Adam Peters aren't responsible for all of the injuries that they've had in terms of the catastrophic injury season that they have suffered so far. And I don't want to hear from people who say, yeah, well, that's what you get when you have an old team. The old players haven't been injured. Okay. It's not the old players that have been injured so far. Now, if you want to talk about, the older players have hurt them on the field. Von Miller hasn't given them much. Bobby Wagner's obviously struggled in coverage, although he's played pretty well other than in coverage. Zach Ertz has been a non-participant as a blocker. These kinds of things, I'm on board. But I love the blind. Well, of course they're injured. They're the oldest team in the league. Well, those aren't the players who are injured. Thanks for the call. We'll do more calls because I see everybody on hold. Stay there. We'll get to you guys after the break. Kevin Sheehan Show, Team 980 and the team980.com. I forget who called in and talked about the game last night with Green Bay and Philly and said something to the effect of, after watching last night, it's pretty obvious that's not what we are. Yeah. Well, it's not what we are from a coordinator standpoint. Clearly, Jeff Hafley, outstanding job with Green Bay, was a head coach at Boston College where their defense was good. And obviously one of the best, if not the best coordinators defensively of this generation, Vic Fangio. But really, in addition to the two of them, it's extraordinary talent on defense that both of those teams have. I mean, Green Bay and Philadelphia are awesome talent-wise on defense, something that Washington is far from, clearly. Look, it is, again, I want to emphasize, I understand what the injuries have meant to this team overall. I'll net it out because that's what we do in this business. It's a 2-game difference. They'd be 5-5. They'd be in contention here. The defense, had it been healthy, I still don't think would have been a good defense. I think it would have been improved as far as a run defense goes from last year. And I thought we saw signs of that early on with Wise and Kinlaw and Armstrong being on the field, everybody healthy. So I think that may have been the case. It would have been a better run stopping defense, but I'm not convinced that it would have been the kind of difference that we were talking about in the offseason, which it was the number one mystery. Will the defense be as bad? Will it be better, or will it be a lot better? Turns out it's worse. A lot of that is due to the lost players. But what would it have been without the lost players? I think it would have been slightly better as a run defense. No, it would have been much better as a run defense, but just slightly better overall as an entire defense. So they would have needed a healthy Jaden Daniels for 17 games doing what he did last year with, by the way, additions like Tunsil, major addition to this team, getting Cosme back when they got him back, staying healthy in other spots, obviously, having Terry available for 17 to perform another second straight magic act against a much tougher schedule. So, yeah, I mean, I think we all predicted less wins going into this year than we did last year. People like me, idiots like me, said, yeah, but it's still going to be 11. And then when they get to the postseason, 5 will guide us to the promised land. That didn't exactly work out. Let's go to Duntel. Duntel, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Duntel.
Listen, man, we keep tip-tapping around this situation with the defense, man. And my thing is, I'm just mind blown. Why do we waste our time with the defense and not? I mean, I know they added some pieces to the offense, but let me just get to the point. You need a receiver, because if you get this freakish receiver that we need, drives can be sustained. And that was our defense last year when our offense was able to stay on the field for so long. I mean, I wish I could pull up the number of how many drives we had last year that lasted over 6 or 7 minutes.
Yeah, we were way up there in time of possession. Way up there, yep.
Yeah, and
our best defense was our offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is critical because of the way our defense is. Because I believe our only hope on defense was Will Harris, and he got hurt first game or second game, and that just completely.
Third game.
I mean, everybody else that we added, everybody else that we added really didn't matter to me, man. I'm so on this receiver to help Jaden out, because number one, it helps your defense. Number two, I don't think Jaden has to be the Superman that he was last year. Definitely playing against better teams this year than we did last year.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, if we're going to start talking about offseason, and I think it's not too early to do it because they're in a playoff race and they're not mathematically eliminated. It's just too early to do it because the college, mock draft boards just keep changing week in and week out. But one guy that is definitely going to be a top-level pick, and, just root for lots of quarterbacks, right, to emerge as, potential first-rounders. So we see 5 or 6 of them off the board before Washington picks, 8, 9, 10, 11, wherever it ends up. But Reuben Bain from Miami, if you haven't watched him, he looks like a potential game-wrecking defensive player. So if somebody like that was available, there's no way I'd pass that for a receiver at number 10 or number 11 or number 12. That's just my reaction today. Thank you, Duntel. Let's go to Mark in Largo. Mark, what's up?
Hey, Kevin, you've been avoiding me.
I haven't avoided you. You haven't called in.
I have called in like 3 or 4 times. I'm just messing with you.
That's is that true, Max?
The problem is,
No, I highlight your name, Mark, every time you call.
Yeah,
in.
that's you just made that up.
Okay.
Yeah, because when do I not take Mark and Largo's calls when he's on, unless he's at the very bottom of the call list, and we just don't be defensive to start the call, Mark. Please.
No, I won't. I'm just messing with you. No. Look, here's what I think they should do. I think they need to dedicate their free agency to the offense and really playmakers. Kevin, I was telling Max this last week, and I think this would be a good move for them because I think he's going to be available. Washington needs to go get Kyle Pitts Sr.
Oh God, no.
Why not?
There's so much. There's a major reddish flag around this dude since he came into the league. If you followed the Falcons at all, I mean, he's having a slightly better year this year, but work ethic, a lot of different things are an issue with him. The talent's unmistakable, but you got to be really careful on that front.
Well, let me say this. Didn't they say that same thing about Javon Kinlaw? I would go get him.
I don't think so, but
you know what, Kevin?
I don't think so.
Kevin,
Did they say that with Kinlaw?
Y'all got to get out.
They said it was an overpay.
About George Pickens. They said the same thing about George Pickens. Look, Kevin, you gotta get out of this personality conflict, man. If he was a perfect person, he'd be doing better. Don't get Kyle Pitts Sr.
You're my favorite.
Like
Look, there's a big difference between Pickens and other. I mean, Pitts hasn't really produced at all. I mean, so what do you do? I mean, look, for hardly anything? Okay. Okay.
You know what? You know what's funny? You know what's funny, Kevin?
What?
You and a bunch of other people on the radio show, y'all sit up here and say, when people offer suggestions, y'all say, nah, not a good idea. And then we're stuck with what we got at the receiver position.
Give me a good idea so I can say good idea.
I'm going to tell you right now, if Adam does not get some toys around Jayden next year, he will be out the door.
Okay. I don't disagree with that. Your top choice is a guy that's had red flags all over him since he entered the league.
Well, who would you? Now, I would love to get Brian Thomas Sr. I would love to get him from Jacksonville.
Why?
And I think
let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question about Brian Thomas Jr., right? A guy that performed at the level that he did as a rookie was apparently available at the trade deadline and nobody dealt for him. Explain why that might be.
Oh God, Kev, here we go.
It's a question. Explain why that is.
Okay, so what do you suggest that they do for the shopping list for Jayden?
Oh, I think they need playmakers. I think they need a lot of playmakers. The first two you've suggested are going to be.
My God.
What?
Kevin, you can't. If I'm bringing up playmakers who will make a difference for this team, why are you always shooting everything? Of course, everybody's going to have issues, man. Everybody is.
Not necessarily. Not everybody.
Jesus.
Just the two you mentioned.
Oh my. Okay, so who would you go get, Kevin?
You know what? You know who I wouldn't mind at all is somebody really good without red flags coming off. Well, I haven't spent a lot of time looking at who's even available, okay, for next year. But I'm just telling you, my reaction to the first two you gave was what it was because those things are real. If you think the receiver in Jacksonville that played with Jayden at LSU is such a valuable guy, why didn't somebody trade for him? And why on hell would Jacksonville want to trade him? He had a drop problem.
Who cares? Just go get him.
We know that.
Look,
who cares?
Look, here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom line, Kevin. You need someone that can get Jayden's 50-50 ball, okay?
Kyle Pitts would be good. I think if you can get both of them, their offense is much better. Jaden doesn't have to do everything. Jaden is the leader of this team. He can change things for these guys. Stop acting like
does not look like a great wide receiver free agent market.
Oh, my God. There you go. There you go. There you go.
I'm just looking at it right now. I'm pulling it up based on your request. I'm trying to help you out.
Radio host we have out here. We want to get
I'm trying to help you out. You want to go free agency, and I'm just telling you, it doesn't look like a great free agent 2026 class. That's what I'm telling you. Sorry, I'd like to say that the best receivers in the league, Pickens is going to be available. That was a 1-year deal.
I don't think he's going to say. I think Dallas is going. I think they're going to sign him up. I don't think he's going to leave.
See, there you go again. There you go again. Reacting to everything I throw out. The kid Pierce. How about the kid Pierce in Indianapolis? He's a free agent, unrestricted free agent. Like him.
Go get him. What about an athletic tight end out there outside of Pitts? You knew.
Let me look at the tight end. Let me look at the tight end list. Doesn't look like very many tight ends are coming up for free agency.
Can I interest you in 36-year-old Travis Kelce, Kevin?
No.
I didn't think so.
I'm going to tell you, Max loves Kyle Pitts Sr.
Listen,
he's with me.
Hold on.
Tell him, Max.
I will agree with Kevin's red flags point because I've watched Kyle Pitts from Florida. The athletic talent, unmistakable.
Now you're going to punk out on me.
I'm not punking out. No, I would love. Listen, if you want to go out, if they want to go out and get Kyle Pitts, more than fine with it. I would love to see how that plays out. I would love to get a tight end that athletic with Jaden, and who knows, maybe you get him into this environment with all these this veteran leadership, and he actually starts to put his nose down and work. But the red flags are there. I do agree with Kevin on that, but I also will agree.
They're all over here. Kyle Pitts, all over him. He had a massive drop in the Sunday game in Berlin. Yeah. How many more questions are you going to ask me? Because we got to plan our breaks around you every show. Okay.
Last one.
All right.
Who has more red flags? Pickens or Pitts? Pickens or Pitts? Who has more red flags?
Oh God. Oof.
That's a great question.
Pitts. And let me just tell you why I know that, okay? Because of whose season last year that I followed closely.
Oh, God.
Kirk's season last year. I followed it closely, and I saw the issues with Pitts. I read a lot about what Atlanta people think about Pitts. Now, this year, Penix Jr. has gone to Pitts more. Pitts has had a step-up year, but there were a lot of questions about work ethic, about drops, about interest level, how much he really loves football. So that's why I reacted the way I reacted. Pickens Jr., like you said, I don't even know why you brought him up. He's probably going to want to stay in Dallas, and they're probably going to want to re-sign him.
Yeah, probably.
We got a lot of cap space. It doesn't look like the best year for some of the positions we're going to be looking for, but we'll have plenty of segments on that.
So we got plenty of time to talk about this, don't we, Kevin?
we got a lot of time to talk about it. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. We got to move on now. We got to move on. I don't think we've not taken Mark's call once, by the way, which is the way he kicked off the segment. Let's go to Stan in Jersey. Stan, what's up?
How are you, Kevin? You're pretty feisty this morning. Hopefully I can make this a little conversation a little lighter. Last year you mentioned we had 3 players that would have started on that Philly team. This year, as Dean Warmer would say, we have 0.0. Quinn wanted to take over as defensive coordinator, just like Dan Campbell wanted to take over offensive duties before the Washington game. I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah, right.
I don't have anything clock management-wise. I'm not sure really how you could when we lose every game by 30 points. But you stole my thunder on the kickoff and the Mariota 2-point plays. I was just glad to see Dave Gardy, our situational guru, was at the game last night because he pulled Mariota. I figured the week prior he must not have been there to give that nice token of advice to Dan Quinn.
Well, he should have said, if he's in charge of this, no, coach, we're not running a 2-point conversion down 41-22 with 6 minutes to go in the game. You're just going to get somebody else hurt, and it doesn't even make sense mathematically. Put Matt Gay out there and let's kick the extra point, please. Because can you imagine on that sack where there was a penalty if Mariota had gotten hurt on that?
Oh, my God. I mean, like I said, he wasn't there last week because he would have been smart enough to tell him that Mariota had to come in the game for Jaden. So glad Dave Gardy's all well and healthy. Who do you got winning the fifth wide receiver position battle for next year? Is it going to be Robbie Chosen, Chris Moore, Traylon Burks? What are your odds? I like Burks because I feel like he has the football type of name. The other two don't. But we got 7 more weeks to decide that. Anyway, I'd like to also discuss Peters a little bit. I mean, give me a little time here. I know it takes us 2 to 3 years to get these rookies a fair evaluation. But we got, I mean, Kevin, it's been 30 games. We got Ben Sinnott. He can't get on the field over Zach Ertz. We got our man Brandon
He did
Coleman
catch a
that got
touchdown
benched
on
by the Hall of
Sunday.
Fame
How many
point
snaps
guard.
did he play Sunday?
I don't know. It's just sad. I don't know what's going on with that guy. Coleman got benched for the Hall of Fame point guard. You know, you always say Johnny Newton flashes. I love that word. But I say, you know, you're allowed to flash.
How about in recent games
game.
he flashed once?
You know what I'm saying? You could flash more than once a game, and you can do it in consecutive games. It's not allowed.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
You got McCaffrey who got hurt, and he was coming on strong as a third-round pick kickoff returner. I know, and through 2 years, he's had, I think it's about 30 catches in 30 games, so that's pretty good production, I guess. I'll still say that.
I think, Stan, I think doing this, like you're one of my sharper callers, you know, regularly. You know that these draft evaluations on a class from last year, 30 games into it, it's absurd. It's just, I mean, unless they move on or cut a player that was drafted very high, other than that, you just, you know, Coleman's come back to play well at tackle. Sanders still was great last year, not so much this year. Jordan McGee's got some, you know, ability in this draft. I mean, right now you'd say Trey Amos, but maybe next year he's going to suck in the up and down development of a young player. Who knows? Now we don't get to see him the rest of this year.
I'd like to see a little bit more. You were a year and a half in. I know it takes 2 to 3 years, Kevin. I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah.
With you. And I know Saban said Sanders still was the best player in last year's draft, so I'm going to trust him on that one. Anyway, I got 2 more things, right? A couple things.
Okay.
The Terry contract, I agree. You had to sign the guy. I mean, he was a great player last year. But when you say he's a great contested ball catcher and locker room guy, the one thing that screams to me about great contested ball catcher is he gets zero separation.
Well, we've known that, Stan. We know that he's not a game plan for a guy. He doesn't get separation like we see with the great receivers. That's why they didn't want to pay him.
It's $100 million. It's like, man, there's 25 other receivers that you're more scared to face. You're more
of course. Don't tell our fans that. Don't tell our fans that. They don't watch the rest of the league. They thought he was top 5, top 10.
Like you said, would you take a 35-year-old Tyreek Hill off of a leg injury over Terry next year? I mean,
right now, yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Me too. Anyway, I also have.
But hold on, because we're leaving the Terry conversation here with people thinking that we don't think he's any good at all. That's not how I feel. I think he's good.
He's good.
I think he's really good, and he's the best they have, and he is an excellent contested catch guy. So there's nothing wrong with that. And he is or at least was an excellent teammate. I'm not casting aspersions here. I don't know what the situation is now. I think he was very disappointed and very distraught over how everything ended, how it went and then how it ended. What else you got quickly?
Yeah. All right. I hate Dan Quinn with that freaking hat. I mean, I think it's a bad look when you're losing by 30. You remember the movie Over the Top with Lincoln Hawk when he flips the switch? I didn't see it. Switch has been off all year. If you've ever seen the movie, it's pretty funny. Yeah. Anyway, last thing, Kevin. The one thing that always cracks me up with you when you give game plans for other teams who we're playing each week, you always go, "Hey guys, we're playing the 2-8 Saints this week. They got guys like Chris Olave. He's a nice player. Alvin Kamara can beat you with his legs. They got guys that can rush the passer a little bit." So you'll always give like a list of 3 or 4 guys that you think we have to be worried about, just to make the listeners aware, like, hey, look, they got some guys. Every team has guys. We know that. I was wondering what you would say if you had to be the radio host for another town. This is what I think it would go like. Guys, they got a former number 2 pick in Marcus Mariota that when he gets into open space, you have to be aware of him trying to jump over you.
Stan, let's stick.
He flips the field. and they have two
Yeah.
future Hall of Famers.
Right now, if you're doing that for Washington coming up as an opponent, you're like, thank God we've got this particular team this week, especially if you're in, because Washington's defense is a get right game. You know, there are very few get right games in the league. Washington's defense is a get right game for everybody right now. There's no doubt about that.
Future Hall of Famers, the two future Hall of Famers we got on defense, they better not take us lightly over there, you know. And of course, that
See ya.
three-headed monster.
I got to roll. Thanks, Stan. All right. We're still in our first segment this hour. All right, let's break. We'll take some more calls from some of you guys on the other side. I do want to get to some of the other NFL from the weekend and some of the other sports from the weekend. We'll do that to finish up the show. Stay on hold. Kevin Sheehan Show, Team 980, and the team980.com. This from Aaron. Can't believe you haven't mentioned the Detroit Stadium takeover. Felt like old times, although not that old. Not a pretty sight. Like you've said before, if they don't win big and win big consistently, ownership is fighting an uphill battle against their name decision. And like Tom said, thank God they got the stadium deal done before this season began. Yeah, I don't know how much the stadium decision would have been impacted had it come off a follow-up season to last season that was bad, like if they didn't make the decision until after this year. But yeah, I was not at the stadium. I heard from many of you that it felt like olden times, not that old, as Aaron wrote, that there was a lot of silver and blue in the crowd. And that's, yeah, but you certainly can't give ownership a hard time for selling tickets to those people. I mean, you're going to have an Eagles game and a Cowboys game, and the Cowboys will be out of it, right, by the time we get to Christmas Day. What are the other home games? Denver? Does Denver travel well as a fan base? To be honest with you, I don't even know the answer to that question. But they're here, and they're having a great season. The Eagles are here on December 20th. Yeah, that feels like it could be a takeover. No doubt. Let's go to did Paulie drop? Let's go to Dre in Baltimore. Dre's been on hold. Dre, thank you. Go ahead.
What's up, Kevin? How you doing?
I'm well, Dre.
Good. I just wanted to chime in and say, given all the parameters surrounding this particular game, it was very baffling. And I'm glad that person just chimed in about the stadium. It was very baffling when I felt like I was a culprit in my own home. Just seeing all the blue across the stadium, it was very demoralizing. We are a wishy-washy fan base, and we can't let our team feel like they're going to be walking the plank season in, season out. You got to have more pride and more fight for your team. But people are angry. I stopped two.
I'm laughing because it's like we are not even 10 months removed from the single greatest season moment, the Detroit playoff win in the divisional round in 33 seasons, with everything looking like it is now a competent, professionally run organization, and it's much better to be in this position. And 10 months later, after the most injury-riddled season that this team's had in probably 9 years, the 8 years, 2017 being the last one, people are bailing. I think there are a lot of reasons why they bail, in a season like this. And by the way, I don't think it's unusual for fan bases, with the exception of Packers, a few of them, to Buffalo, to bail on a 3-7 team. You get takeovers now in a lot of stadiums. You really do. It was, our thing to celebrate on our own. I'm being facetious. For many years, where we were the, basically the road team at home for many years. But now a lot of teams have that situation, especially when seasons go badly. Anyway, continue.
Indeed. And it started from that. Well, when I called in after the Packers game about recalibrating this team a little bit, because anyone who's ever been a competitor and played organized sports or whatever, you could see the fight and you could see fundamental flaws in this football team. And after that Bears game, people were angry. People were pissy. I stopped two 20-year-old ladies from beating up an 80-year-old woman, and we're wearing the same jersey. Literally, as we're leaving the game, just stuff brewed up. That video that went viral, did you see that fan that jumped the rail and tried to go after the Lions player?
But again, not, these are the things we see on social media all the time from fan bases all over the country.
Yeah, but it's just a distasteful. But and I wanted to chime in on the Amon-Ra St. Brown thing. If you watch the Netflix documentary on Receiver, he is, with the helmet on, he is everything you want in a player. But when you listen to his dialect on the sidelines and through the course of the game, he's a little nasty, and it might be coming to him because it's just the stuff that comes out of his mouth is like polarizing, but other than that, he was a straight baller. But
honestly, I don't know anything about Amon-Ra, and I didn't watch The Receiver Netflix. I didn't realize that he was one of those guys in it. But I know that he is really, really good on the field. Although you just reminded me, I'm going to go see if the All-22 shows him swatting at Duran first. I am interested to see that. I'll try to look at that and get you an answer before the show. Thanks, Trey, as always. Let's go to Anthony. Anthony, go ahead. Anthony, what's up?
Question for you.
Yes.
So when are you going to start calling people back after the show that don't make it on air?
Like Ken Beatrice did all those years?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
432 WMAL, and if I don't get you on, I'll have you leave my phone number with my producer, and I'll call you. And by the way, Anthony, you know this because you and I basically are the same age, and we grew up with the same thing. He did call you back.
Yeah, he called me back one time.
He called me back once. Yeah. All right, what do you got?
But that's not on your bingo card, though. Okay.
Not anytime soon. Look, he didn't have email and social media and all of that. I mean, I will before every show, I will take some time because usually it's an inspiration and sometimes makes for good content on the show to kind of read through tweets and emails, an hour before the show. So I'll do that. No, because I remember he had a show at night. When it was over, he had all morning to call people back. That's just excuse making on my part. I'll consider it. What do you got that's more significant here?
So I've told you this before. I was cautiously hopeful / optimistic going into the season.
Yeah.
But I think people got delusional off of last year. Our defense has been bleep for the past 10 or so years. So based on our defense and based on the quarterbacks we were playing, you couldn't have the mindset that we were going to be back where we were before. People look at it from one standpoint, our defense.
Did I just lose Anthony?
I didn't touch it. He just dropped out.
I love Anthony as a caller. I will have him call back.
I will.
Let's go to Lou. Lou's been on hold for a while. Lou, go ahead.
What's going on, Kev?
Hey, Lou, what's happening, man?
Are you here?
I got you.
Yeah, I heard you mentioning about some defensive coordinators probably for next season, but I was thinking of Brian Flores from Minnesota. I think he might be.
Well, why? He's not going to leave Minnesota. I don't know why he would leave Minnesota. Maybe he would, but yeah. I love Brian Flores as a D coordinator. He's hoping to get a job and get an opportunity to be a head coach at some point again. But all that league stuff has kind of quelled those opportunities.
Okay, I just saw some stats, and this team is good at running the ball, and they still rank top 10. Why is Cliff not getting stripped of the play calling? Why is he just going, doing it to Joe? Because it's just, to me,
are you being serious? Look, who are you going to have call the plays if you move on from Cliff?
I mean, he ain't
Brian
doing
Johnson
this season. I mean,
Tavita Pritchard.
Somebody. I mean,
okay.
Somebody.
Why?
Kevin. I mean, let's
so
be
tell
honest.
me why.
They both.
Tell me why. They moved the football against Detroit. They moved the football against Kansas City. I mean, the game last week against Seattle was, penalty ridden. We've had turnovers, penalties. I'm not saying Cliff. I've picked on the games in which I thought Cliff didn't call the best game, but I certainly have not even given one thought yet to pulling him. He's had his starting quarterback for 5.5 of the 10 games.
Yeah, I just think.
Do you think that the comparison to Kingsbury and Witt Jr. is comparable?
To be honest, I'm I've been sitting back and watching his games, and he Like, if we are good at one thing, you trying to attack teams with, if you running the ball, just run the ball, and you can do the throwing the ball and doing the play
Chris
action, and you
Rodriguez
get
had
little funny.
16 yards on 6 carries. That's
But
2.7
my
yards
thing
per
is,
carry. Krosky Merritt, 11 for 30, 2.7 yards per carry. So they combined 17 carries for 46 yards, 2.7 yards per carry. McNichols got some yards against their second stringers when they put them in the fourth quarter. He actually tried to run the football against Detroit.
but he doesn't
tried
do it
to.
Okay, Kevin, I guess you make your argument, but like I said, I think to me, Joe is a scapegoat, and he had to do it for the media and the fans, and I think it's a bad.
I hope he
move.
didn't do
think
it for that reason. I'm not saying
look,
he didn't, but I hope he didn't.
They don't have any players. Look at this team. They don't have any.
The offense doesn't either. Yeah.
All right. Well. All right. Thanks for taking.
Look, a lot of things can be true
Appreciate it.
simultaneously, right? Number one, you're lost without all of these starters on both sides of the ball. Number two, you're playing much better opponents. In the case, that was the joke that Stan, I think, made. Like perfect timing for Dan Campbell to take over play calling on Sunday from his offensive coordinator against Washington's defense, right? Perfect timing for Dan Quinn to take over play calling and defensive coordinator for responsibilities from Joe Witt Jr. after they just faced Kansas City, Seattle, and Denver. And Detroit, excuse me. So there's a lot of context, but Joe Witt Jr. has 30 games of a resume that stinks. It doesn't matter if it's all him or just partially him. That's the resume. Kingsbury has a great resume of 30 games, last year's in particular. And this year, you can chalk up, he hasn't had a starting quarterback for 5.5 games. I'm not saying that I think Cliff's done a great job in every game, because I don't, but I think the difference between comparing Joe Witt Jr. to Cliff Kingsbury, that's just a miles apart comparison in my view. Anthony's back. Anthony, go ahead.
So what I was saying was so we know our defense was the issue, or people should have known defense was the issue. But people don't look at it from the flip side. We're playing better quarterbacks. Yes, that affects our defense. We're playing better offenses. It affects our defense. But when you flip it around, we're playing better defenses also.
Yeah.
So the season, in my opinion, was always contingent on the defense. Can the defense play well enough to, at a minimum, keep games close? And we see the resounding answer is no. So it's not only a one-sided thing; it's a two-sided coin.
Yeah, I agree.
Look at who our offense is playing. So
here's what I would just say real quickly, Anthony. The last time they had any semblance of health was really their last, win, which was over the Chargers. Now, they didn't have Terry in that game, okay? And they didn't have Eckler, and there were, pieces missing. I'm not saying that they were completely healthy. The Chargers are an excellent defensive team this year. I think that most people would agree that they're a pretty good defensive team. Washington, after those first 2 drives, slayed them up and down the field. The defense in that game, if you recall, it got, it was not great, but because of some of the injuries they had, they got after Herbert and forced some bad plays. That's the last time we played a good team with, relative to where it is now, decent health. It wasn't the best health at all. Since then, the Chiefs, Seahawks, and Lions, 3 in a row against elite level football teams, 2 elite level offenses. And the Chiefs, look, I know what they did in the follow-up against Buffalo. That was Buffalo on the road. That's a big game, etc. I still think the Chiefs are one of the best teams in the league. So the timing of everything has sucked, where they've become the least healthy right in time for their most brutal part of their schedule. But when it comes to defense, man, it don't explain it all, because we've got 30 games to look at, and last year it wasn't good when they played bad offensive football teams. All right. We're going to finish up with just some thoughts on the NFL weekend and even last night. We'll do that after this. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. All of our football conversation on this show presented by Paramount Plus, streaming November 16th on Paramount. It's the return of Landman from Taylor Sheridan, co-creator of Yellowstone. Academy Award winner Billy Bob Thornton is back. Man, is he good in this show, featuring Academy Award nominees Demi Moore, Andy Garcia, and Sam Elliott. Landman, new season starting and streaming November 16th, only on Paramount Plus.
He had 43 yards all night. He gets 41 there, the longest play of the game on either side. Shoulder, pump fake, end zone. It is caught for the touchdown, Devontae Smith.
So last night's Monday night game, I found it interesting, and I watched it, start to finish. Like a lot of times I'll say, man, that 10-7 game was great. And there was phenomenal defense. These are two excellent defensive teams, well-coached defensive teams. But I came away from it thinking neither one of those teams is beating the Rams or the Seahawks in the postseason. I don't care where the game is. You got to be able to make plays downfield, and you got to be able to scheme people open. And I don't know that that's happening right now. Jordan Love also, man, his best is way up there. But his decision-making, he had a stupid fumble in field goal range at the end of the first half that cost them a chance for 3. Jalen Hurts, that touchdown pass that you heard coming in was one of only 2 touchdowns. They both came in the fourth quarter. But it was set up with a check down throw to Saquon Barkley, who then took it 41 yards for the biggest play of the game offensively for Philadelphia. You can't coach that. You can't scheme that. That's just Barkley. He did one of those, 360 moves on a would-be tackler. God, his acceleration is scary good. The Eagles win the game 10-7. They still, I guess, when they need to make big plays like the touchdown pass to Devontae Smith, they make them. That's a 50-50 ball, though. That if you watch that touchdown, that is a 50-50 throw. When you got to be careful in that spot because really another field goal may be all you need. 10-7, Philadelphia. They made a decision, by the way, late in the game, if you were watching this up late. They had a 4th down and 6 at Green Bay's 35 with 33 seconds to go. Green Bay had no timeouts left, and they decided to go for it. I thought they should have punted it. I thought definitely they should have punted it. It was a windy, cold night. A 52-yard field goal would have been in play, I guess. But if you miss it, then you give Green Bay the ball at the 42. But when they went for the 4th and 6, and rather than actually go for something that would move the sticks, they took a deep shot to A.J. Brown, who was covered. It was incomplete. They gave Green Bay the ball at the 35-yard line with 27 seconds left. A punt down to, let's just say, anywhere inside the 20 would have left them with far worse field position and maybe even more time off the clock, depending on how high the punt was and how much it hit and rolled around, if that ended up being a possibility. Anyway, Philly wins. Man, both teams are impressive defensively, but I just don't think they have the juice that at least this team has. The Rams beating San Francisco on the road in Santa Clara Sunday.
Pressure up the middle. Jones in deep trouble. Knocked away. Picked up by Emmanuel Forbes. The Rams pick it off and take over.
Emmanuel Forbes playing pretty well as a starter for the LA Rams. Brian Robinson Jr. in that game for the 49ers. 8 carries, 41 yards, and a touchdown. The Rams, they got out to a 21-0 lead. The 49ers got it back to 21-14, but the Rams are so good offensively right now. How good is Matt Stafford playing? 280, 4 touchdowns, no picks. And they end up, winning the game, and not getting into one of those close games with the 49ers where Kyle's had the number, but 400 plus yards against the 49ers defense, 31 first downs in the game, and they win 42-26, and they play Seattle this coming weekend in a game that might be right now between the two best teams, not only in the NFC, but in the league. Real quickly, I did want to say, I watched that Pats Tampa game start to finish. Love Drake May. Love the way he's playing. I'll also say this. Wow, the Patriots defense playing at a super high level as well. Travion Henderson, my God. I mean, 2 touchdowns in the game. The length of the touchdowns, the first one was 55 yards. The second one was 69 yards. it helps. But Drake May's playing at a really, really high level. It's a good football team. That was a real test against Todd Bowles' defense. I think they passed it. They get the Jets on Thursday night. They've got such an easy schedule. With Buffalo losing, I think the Patriots could end up winning the AFC East. All right, wanted to leave you with this. Window Nation knows things are tough right now for people in the D.C. area with the government shutdown. We'll see whether or not that ends. If you've been impacted, Window Nation wants to help right now. You'll save 50% off all Windows styles. Plus, you can get 0% financing for 5 years. That's real relief and a great way to make your home more comfortable before winter hits. A+ rating they have from the Better Business Bureau. Thousands of satisfied customers right here in the DMV. You can trust Window Nation to take care of you. I promise that. And your home. Don't wait. Call them before November 30th to get started or go to windownation.com. All right, who's next?
Got JP and Steve Zabin coming up next to resume the simulcast over on 106.7
Zabe's coming up next with JP. Must listen.